Hello everybody, this is Brother and Pastor Craig from SDRMinistries.org, and you've got our SDR Media YouTube channel. And it's a very beautiful day out here in the Philippines. Very, very sunny. So I've got to wear my glasses because sometimes these chemtrails that they pour out there from time to time, those metals get really bright and they just really shine and you can hardly see sometimes. And so, talking about chemtrails that are falling in this New World Order, they're also falling in the vaccines. Very bad stuff. You're going to see what's going on with that too a little more. Also, try to do your best to get as healthy as you possibly can in these last days. It's very important. Health in the last days is a big deal. It's also part of the three angels message. It's the right arm and the power and the strength to preach the truth and what have you. Because if we have bad health, then we're not going to be able to stand in the last days. That's why it's crucial we get healthy. Strive to get out from underneath the yoke of Babylon, because they are poisoning everyone they possibly can. And they're doing it not through just vaccines, but they're doing it through the air, they're doing it through the water, and they're doing it in the foods. They are mixing their potions, their chemicals, and putting it in the foods and causing people to get very sick. And you see it going on today. With a lot of a number of Christians, we're working so hard to become so fit and exercising, because when you look at the world today, if you're not going to do the best you can, you're not going to engage in getting healthy or reading your Bible and spiritually growing, God's not going to do it for you. Just like He's not going to do it for us to make it through our test that's coming. It's just like these ministers today, a lot of them preaching this pre-trib rapture theory that you're going to be taken out of the storm, when that's not true. You're going to go through the storm. Having faith in Jesus Christ and loving Him and obeying Him doesn't mean He's going to take you out of the storm, because everybody must be tested. And when God removes those hedge of angels around us, we've got to be so close to Christ, because when that test comes, we're either going to pass or we're going to fail.
Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? And Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made an hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand.
And this is why doing everything we can to think of the worst case scenario, so that it will prepare you for whatever's coming. I'm not going to be a minister of truth that's going to calm you down before the storm, because this storm that's coming is going to be very intense. If you study the Old Testament, where there was famines coming in the land, God had His people prepare and to store things up for those seasons when they were not going to have food and what have you. And this buy and sell system, if we're involved with the king of Babylon and under his yoke and relying upon him and the merchants of the earth that are underneath his wings, then we're going to get caught up in this system. That's why God is commanding also, one of His reasons, to get out into the country and to grow your own food, and to spiritually grow and physically grow, to get strong, so that you can be fit in all areas of your life and glorify God. Because if you're not fit, it's very hard to preach the truth and the true angel's message and the health reform, because your works go along with your profession. And it's a big part of these last days in preaching the truth. You got to be that walking example for Christ Jesus, to do all that you can to glorify Him and to bring the truth to the people through your blessed works that the Holy Spirit is working with you and through you. And so my message for today is, when you look at these end time videos, prepare yourself to get ready to get out into your country living through prayer and doing all that you can. Because when we're out here in this country living and you're growing your own food, you're not relying upon the merchants of the earth that are yoked up with the king of Babylon, the Pope, you're going to have a much easier time living out in the country when that buy and sell system comes forward. Because if you look at what's going on in the world today as they're testing it and they're emptying the shelves, look at how all the people are panicking and the shelves are becoming empty. That's the point in the buy and sell. Just like Jesus was tested, okay, on food, the world, and worship. Those three things are also going to be our test. And if we're not going to prepare for this first phase of the buy and sell system where they're going to control the food to try to make you bow down to the king of Babylon, God is not going to provide for you when you can do it yourself. It's just like the Israelites in the wilderness. They were venturing through their wilderness of test. They were fleeing from Egypt. They could not stop and grow their own food. God fed them there in the wilderness as well because they had no promised land. When they got to their promised land, there was no reason for God to rain manna and to give them water because God provided it through the land for them on their promised land. And so it's very important that we do all we can to get out into our land of milk and honey where God has provided food for us out here and not underneath the yoke of Babylon in his cities relying upon his food. And if we have land and you're not doing anything with it, that's our own accountability. We've got to get into the garden, get exercise, get healthy. I'm doing this every day because I want to glorify God and I want to be very healthy. I'm working out, I'm jogging, I'm walking, I'm lifting weights. I'm getting back to where I once was when I used to play football myself. And I feel so much better and juicing my own foods and drinking like 16 ounces of 5 glasses of those of herbs a day. And it's really helping me and bringing back more clarity and more ability to get out here and to just zip through these fields and not have problems. And so just like how we've got work to do in our own life and, you know, getting fit for hopefully making into 144,000, we've got to do our part because God's not going to do it for us. You try sitting on the couch your entire life and then get up and try to go run. It's going to be very difficult. God's not going to do it for us. Just like if you're not going to do everything you can to get out in the country, to grow your own food, or to get into the soil where it was man's first employment, to grow his own food, it's going to be his last employment before the armies come and you're fleeing. That's when God will provide for you. But when you have the opportunity to take care of yourself and to do the right thing, you've got to do it. And having faith in God doesn't mean that we stand idle. And anyone that tells you that you're lacking faith because you're preparing for all the end times and getting fit as much as possible, tell them it's not that you lack faith, it's that they lack understanding, wisdom, and knowledge. So until next time, get prepared in all areas. Do everything you can to glorify God in your walk. He will set you upright and he will work through you as much as you allow him. So until next time, be blessed, my beloved brethren, and do all that you can to be that next person to glorify God in this world that is sinking further into the deceptions. Wake them up, sleeping saints, wake them up and go out into the Lord's vineyard and do the work that he has called unto us.
2,000 years ago, it died a bloody brutal death for you on the cross. Not that you will continue to sin, but that you will stop to sin. Stop your sin. You see, Jesus said, go and sin no more. Not sin a little bit. He said, go and sin no more.
social media video, a woman describes her terrifying experience inside a Chinese hospital. She says she witnessed critically ill coronavirus patients being sent away for cremation while they're still alive. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
A Wuhan hospital is sending coronavirus patients for cremation while they're still alive. That's according to a woman in a video that's circulating on social media. Speaking in a Wuhan dialect, the woman describes how she witnessed the patient next door being sealed up in body bags. This video could not be independently verified.
这一块去还没灭，那手就他啃他的头的时候，
能还得动，
他是就是还得动，然后就是就捆了之后呢，就一个塑料的拿那个袋子，一个盒袋子，就你妈一包，包了之后拿一拉。
She goes on to say the man was wrapped in 4 body bags and then put into a box-like device. The man was in his 70s and critically ill. He was in room number 18, the ward next door to her.
We all call it the New World Order. We might as well call it the One World Order, because this is about one everything. I've discussed the reasoning behind the repetition with the word one, all the songs about one, becoming one, okay? The New World Order is one. The Tower of Babel reborn. One nation, one religion, one gender, one currency, all under one God, and that God is their God, Lucifer. That is what they are trying to recreate.
Okay, she's gonna have to come with us now.
Okay, Kai, we gotta go with them, baby girl.
Stand up. Okay, come over here.
What are those for?
It's for you.
Keep your hands, okay? Come over here, honey. It's not gonna hurt.
No!
Okay,
No, I don't want it, come on! No!
Tonight, the FBI and local authorities are reviewing this video showing police in Chicago shooting a man at a train station. The officers stopped the man for walking between cars while riding the train, a misdemeanor offense. Police using a stun gun, wrestling the man to the ground in a struggle to handcuff him. A witness recorded the incident.
He was resisting, but he was not violent as far as I could see, and he was unarmed. And at some point, the male officer said, shoot him. The female officer, I think at that point, pulled out her mace and maced him in the face.
The man staggering to his feet as one of the officers pulls out a gun and fires.
As this outbreak grows globally and the number of cases in the U.S. rises, many are wondering what the government will do and what they can do in order to prevent the spread.
By the way, when the virus gets bad, he's going to declare martial law. Watch that.
Oh, my God.
He's going to declare martial law. Watch that.
Oh, my God.
Well, airlines have already suspended flights to the hotspots, but they're canceling other ones and say there could be more to come. Businesses like Amazon and Google are suspending business travel for tens of thousands of their employees. That means bookings are soft. Airlines are worried. Some are telling employees to take unpaid leave and freezing wages. British Airways, because of declining demand, has canceled right around 200 flights so far for this month, including 12 to JFK. Nora, typically that's their most lucrative route.
World leaders are behaving like children, so it falls on us to be the adults in the room.
There is an uneasy calm in Delhi, kept by hundreds of police and paramilitary. It has come late. At least 35 people have died and over 200 injured in the worst communal riots in decades. Trouble began between the Hindu majority and Muslim minority over the controversial citizens' law brought in by the nationalist government under Prime Minister Modi.
Just rolled out this 5G technology, and this is where it started to happen, and all these people were having immune problems, because one of the things that I've talked about with 5G is the dangers it's going to cause on people's bodies. It's going to be like living in a microwave. We've all been warning people about it. Now, what better way to come in and be able to cover this up with all of a sudden everybody getting sick, having respiratory issues, people fainting, people's bodies, temperatures heating up, their core inside their bodies heating up? What better way to deflect off of it? Because people would say, well, what is changing? Why is everybody getting sick? What's going on? They go, it's the 5G, get the 5G down. Instead, they can blame it on something like the coronavirus. It is not, or the coronavirus. It is not something that is new. This thing has existed for a long time. You can even see on the sides of bottles like Lysol that it's supposed to combat the coronavirus. So why are these people spraying themselves with Lysol then? Covering their homes with Lysol? And of course, CNN and these other scam artists have to come out and say, well, it's true, Lysol does say that it can kill the coronavirus, but I mean, it's different when it's in the body, you know, just deflecting, because they can't stop people's people themselves taking all the information they have and looking into things and being real journalists themselves, or whatever they want to call themselves, investigators, or just finding out truth on their own. Because people aren't buying into the mainstream media's crap anymore.
The coronavirus story continues as well and is growing further. Very much we'll be watching the opening of the North American markets this morning. Yesterday, a beating after fears that COVID-19 is going to clobber the global economy.
51,000 companies that are in our database source from the impacted regions in China, which doesn't sound a lot, but we then looked at what is the tier 2 risk. So how many companies have a supplier that sources from China, and that figure then goes up to 5 million companies. And we're currently actually working on an update because obviously now more regions are being impacted in South Korea.
And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth and must be awaked. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets till the blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice nor any to answer, nor any that regarded.
يلا ماشيين الناس ورطان العالم قسما بالله.
Son, son ovnis. Sí, lo son. Lo son. Lo son. Hace tiempo no veía. Hace tiempo no veía, concha tu madre.
Another alert, big story this morning breaking. We're learning 9 people were killed after 2 tornadoes ripped through central Tennessee overnight, including one in Nashville that collapsed more than 40 buildings.
Thou sattest in the throne judging right. Thou hast rebuked the heathen. Thou hast destroyed the wicked. Thou hast put out their name forever and ever. O thou enemy, destructions are come to a perpetual end, and thou hast destroyed cities. Their memorial is perished with them. But the Lord shall endure forever. He hath prepared his throne for judgment, and he shall judge the world in righteousness. He shall minister judgment to the people in uprightness. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And they that know thy name will put their trust in thee, for thou, Lord, hast not forsaken them that seek thee. Sing praises to the Lord which dwelleth in Zion. Declare among the people his doings. When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them. He forgetteth not the cry of the humble. Have mercy upon me, O Lord. Consider my trouble which I suffer of them that hate me, thou that liftest me up from the gates of death, that I may show forth all thy praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in thy salvation. The heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. The Lord is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands.
A veces pienso que el tema del hambre y del desarrollo agrícola se ha convertido hoy en uno de los tantos problemas en este tiempo de crisis.
Indeed, food insecurity is one of the great challenges of contemporary times. According to a new report from FAO, about 800 million people still go hungry. That averages to about 1 out of every 9 humans on Earth. According to a United Nations economist, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia are among the worst hit.
Climate change is a topic on which there are so many studies and a lot of evidence is piling up. What we understand is that likely the countries that are going to be most affected are those of the tropical and subtropical areas. And these are also the areas where we record higher undernourishment and higher number of hungry people. That's why we think that climate change in perspective might worsen the situation in certain countries.
The Vatican itself, when we looked at the Vatican, this place was just the esotericism there, the esoteric symbolism behind this entire warfare platform was all over it. I mean, this thing just reeked of esoteric knowledge. It was just, the symbols were everywhere. Now, when you look down at the Vatican, you see a keyhole and a phallus, and of course the timelines and the shipping lanes coming off there, and the keyholes that lead to those, the doorways that lead from those timelines and shipping lanes from the phallus, from the center of the keyhole there, or the womb, the female womb. And if you look around it, you'll see a bunch of men, statues, just statues of a bunch of guys all around this keyhole. And what they are doing is, this is an orgy. And I can't emphasize that enough, what that means. They're waiting for their turn to be the next pope so they can be in charge of what they're in charge of. And when we looked at what they were laying claim to being in charge of, when you look at the Vatican, was time. That warfare platform was a location on planet Earth to capture time. And it was demonstrated by the gargoyles that were there holding the sands of time horizontally to stop the sands from flowing up and down, and they therefore had captured time with the Gregorian calendar. Now, with the Gregorian calendar, they tell you what day Monday is, what day Tuesday is, what day Wednesday is, and that is the calendar all the stock markets on planet Earth use to pay out to. All shipping and commerce moves by that calendar. So these guys, we found out, have nothing to do with Jesus Christ. They have nothing to do with God. They literally watch the movement and shipment of all commerce. And they say, or they claim, that they have been given, they have heavenly authorizations to be in command and control of those shipping lanes and those timelines, to watch the shipment and movement of all commerce.
New and intense scrutiny on the activities of satanic cults.
Stories of devil worship and satanic cults corrupting young minds.
Unbelievable crime at the hands of satanic cults.
Terrifying tales of secret satanic cults bent on tormenting and corrupting the young. Heavy metal music had hidden satanic messages.
Possibly satanic messages on some rock music recordings.
And games like Dungeons and Dragons were luring kids to devil worship. And it got even stranger.
Allegations of physical and sexual abuse of children at a babysitting service.
The dark world of ritualistic child abuse.
There's a widely held opinion that what happened at the daycare was the devil's handiwork. Underground networks of Satanists were infiltrating daycares and preschools to physically and sexually abuse children in occult rituals. Children began to talk about animal sacrifices, blood rituals, secret tunnels, even cannibalism. Police would lay charges, prosecutors would take them to court, and the media would report uncritically on what seemed to be a growing threat. Authorities searched frantically for evidence of an apparent ritual abuse epidemic across North America. Some cases would fall apart at trial or during appeal. Others resulted in wrongful convictions. Many of the accused spent years in prison, while others faced financial ruin and damaged reputations.
They would put me in cages, they would sacrifice animals, they would have a lot of candles and chanting and bizarre things I had never seen.
Did people think this was a fantasy, that you'd made this all up? It was such hocus pocus that it couldn't possibly have happened?
Well, I was one of the first to stand up and start to recount these kinds of things and to bring it publicly.
The hard evidence is difficult to find because if a child is sacrificed, that child's body isn't going to be left. If it's an Orthodox satanic cult, they're going to burn the body and they're going to eat it during ceremony, so they'll leave no evidence around.
Michelle Remembers was also one of the first books to suggest that underground satanic networks were not only real, but were infiltrating communities in an organized effort. Anyone could be a Satanist, your next-door neighbor, your dentist, or your daycare provider.
All these people network with each other, and they'd all get together and go to seminars and discussions, and they'd be told this is what Satanists do and this is how they do it. And so all that is planted through the use of these kinds of techniques, hypnosis and other ways, that cause the spread of this kind of stuff. So many people say, well, you can't identify these cases unless you've been trained to learn about them. And some of that training becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
All these are the beginning of sorrows.